and welcome to the MoxStars Mother Flippin' Podcast. My name is Jordan Garcia. I'm one of your hosts. I'm one of the okay ones. One of the other okay ones, aka great ones, is Evan Kunai, right to the right of me here. Oh. Wow, that was very loud. R.I.P. Chris Ritter. He's in Vegas enjoying some sunshine and some lazy rivers, so shout out to him.
Yeah, he's a Vegas boy now. We just don't. He lives there.
I love that for him.
He's there. It seems like every other week.
I love that for him, and I'm deeply, deeply envious.
Yeah.
But he has to miss out on this awesome podcast journey that we're all going on with you today. So before we get into it, before we get any further, shout our socials. Go find us on YouTube. Freaking give us a 5 stars on the podcast platforms. We got everything linked down below. On top of that, we have been absolutely crushing, and by we, I mean Evan, has been absolutely crushing the Discord channel. It's been bumping. We're getting tons of new people. So come say hi, come participate, say what's up. We're also running tons of local games in the local Seattle area. So shout out.
What's up? We're going to be playing a bunch, and this week, after you listen to this podcast, we're going to be playing a bunch this week in preparation for the tournament in Issaquah. So you can, if you find us and join us on the Discord, you can actually jam some games with us, and we'll be there pretty much as soon as we're finished with work. So I'd say like 4:30 Pacific Coast time.
Yeah, we get off work and just start jamming games. Yeah, we're going to go to Gabby's this weekend, actually, and we'll be getting ready for... Actually, this won't be out in time.
Yeah, next week's episode will be tournament recap.
We'll have just gotten back from Gabby's and getting ready to go to Laughing Dragon. Back-to-back frickin' tourneys. What is up?
Yeah!
Well, Evan, boy, oh boy, do I have a topic for you here today.
Unfurl your genius idea.
So last week, we talked about mid-range.
Oh, yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, I think I remember that.
I think so, too. I know all of you lovely listeners do. We made a statement in the mid-range episode, and it's that mid-range is quickly going to become a top meta competitor. Because of the presence of stacks and better value pieces being printed, it has gotten to a point where we think the meta is going to start seeing a shift. We've seen a little bit. It's obviously not there yet. You know, Rog Sai still crushing, doing the Turbo Naz, haha, whatever bullshit.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing the change. I'm seeing the tides of turning. The stacks is good. The stacks is healthy. It's out there. It's in every fucking deck. And because of that, we start seeing mid-range decks pop up. There's time for them to set up their value engines and get their dub. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about value engines. Value engines plus smart interaction.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I know you're all saying that at home. I just can't hear you. So I needed Evan to do that cue as well. Thank you. Yeah, but we're talking about value engines, dude. They're the lifeblood of freaking mid-range decks. I think value engines plus smart interaction, whether it be stacks or, on the stack, AO, what up? I think it's what makes not only mid-range decks successful, but a force to be reckoned with. Something that is going to take over the meta.
And before we get into that subject, we have a few pre-game actions.
Of course.
Before the game starts, we have to just make sure we check for that. Pre-game actions.
You got Gemstone Caverns?
Oh, yeah, I do. I do have a Gemstone Cavern.
I want to start with your Gemstone Caverns, because my Gemstone Caverns is less cool.
It's a ley line of anticipation, because I've been anticipating this trade-in for so long. It's the mailbag. Mailbag! We're back with
good.
it. Yeah,
I like
right? Jordan and I got some sweet, tasty things, but more than anything, I accomplished my pipe dream of achieving the shard of dual lands necessary to complete my CEDH deck, which is now Shalai and Halar.
I apologize for that being super loud. I just wanted to punctuate the moment.
It's beautiful. The crowd goes wild. So I got today, not today, it was this weekend. I got a Taiga, a Plateau. I already had a Savannah, and I got a Mox Diamond, all through trade-in. So thank you, Card Kingdom, for your lovely service.
Sponsor us.
If you have any cards just laying around, and this is my suggestion to the world, the magic world, the rich only get richer. Give them your fucking cards so you can actually get some trade-in value and trade up Like, I know it's all well and good to like build your next deck, or like you're super excited about something coming out. Like, call your shots, sure. Like when prices are low, if you called your shot on a Traxa when it was $5,
That just happens so rarely. You know?
yeah, it's like one card in every set, but there is one.
And a lot of times nowadays, I feel like a lot of these people feel like they missed the boat. You know,
Yeah.
like on a lot of the shit.
I hardly participate in it anymore because I feel like I've missed the boat. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like the instant set comes out. If you bought some packs, like Haywire Might, like when that came out in Brothers War, right? I traded in a few of them to Card Kingdom because they're paying $2.24 a piece. Go ahead, sell your fucking Haywire
You don't
Mites
need
to
them.
Card Kingdom.
Why are they that much? I
And
don't understand.
They're selling them for $4, and they must be selling them like actually to people for them to charge that much. So I get that it might be a standard card, but like I encourage all of you to look through your collections, separate yourself from the cards that you know you're not going to need, and send them to Card Kingdom. Or there's that other service that I see all the time.
Card Conduit is one.
Yeah, Card
There's a few
Conduit.
options out there for selling your cards.
Yeah, so like hit any of those up, get your store credit back. I'm just suggesting Card Kingdom because you send it to them, you get the store credit back, and you can immediately turn that into reserved list cards, cards that you need for a deck or whatever. You know, it's like the world is your oyster after you get the store credit.
Yeah. A lot of LGSs will do this, but Card Kingdom's system is just so vast and large, and it's just a machine that it is just very convenient. That being said, you know, if you got a local LGS to go to, do that.
Yeah, if you're in Washington, or if you're in the Seattle area, it's probably the best system to abuse, or to use, not abuse. But like they're so local. Like you can do it either one way. You can either go to Bellevue and trade in, or you can go to the Ballard location and trade in as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Evan and I have been doing for the last few years. And like I thought I had already gotten rid of all of my stuff. And then just from the last, I would say 8 months of 5 to 6 drafts and, you know, maybe 1 or 2 boxes of Commander precons. I don't buy packs.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't even been buying that many singles like this last year. And somehow I still managed to dig deep enough to find $1,300 in trade-in. So like, you know, catch me chilling.
Yeah, that was the same with me. I looked through and it was just like the Haywire Mites were definitely a shocking surprise, but
Yeah, there's a lot of random shit.
there's sometimes like you have a card that you bought like way back in. Like I traded in for a Judge Foil Land Tax, and I thought I like spent too much on it, but Land Tax is all but a dead card in the competitive scene. So, I mean, it has collector value, so I traded in. They paid me exactly what I paid for it. So I was like, hey, appreciation, you know, like I got that.
That's actually
back.
pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nice. That's my mailbag. Got 2 dual lands and a Mox Diamond. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, also very, very crispy. They all look real good. It's not like you were getting those G's.
That's the other thing. If you get it from Card Kingdom, any card over $100, you can show up to the Mox boarding house in Ballard neighborhood of Seattle and go through the process where they will bring down multiple versions of that card, all graded to the same quality, and you get to pick and choose which ones. It's one of my favorite processes.
That is a luxury.
Yeah, and you just get to handle I got to handle 6 different Taigas to like pick the one that I wanted.
Yeah.
I remember going through the process of like Gaia's Cradle, and like people would walk by and they're like watching me like personally grade Gaia's Cradles to like take home. It's so crazy, and it's a very surreal experience because you never really think that you have these cards in your hand, and all of a sudden there's like 4 or 5 of them in front of you.
Yeah. And they also feel so unattainable until you realize how much the random shit in those boxes you've been collecting is worth sometimes.
Right.
So get rid of them. You don't need the bulk, and you don't need the waste of space in your closet anyway, and go get yourself some sick-ass foils.
Oh, yeah, but don't spend up for a Fable the Mirror Breaker right now because it is way too high and way too expensive.
So expensive. Yeah. Be smart with your investments, but, you know.
Yeah. Jordan, what'd you get in the mail?
Oh, shit. I mean, it's nothing nearly as exciting as you got. I've already posted a while back, but I picked up the Underground Sea and that Grim Monolith, which is huge cop. But this week, like I said, we're getting ready for going to the tournaments. So I've switched my commanders once again, as I am wont to do. As I'm wont to do.
You risky fella.
I don't know. I'm just messing around. I'm trying to figure out what vibes with me and what I feel like is I'm going to be the most comfortable with. And I think that's what I'm going to perform the best with. And so we're still figuring that out, you know? Right now, and like the hype train I'm kind of on right now is still Grixis, obviously. But it's Tevesh and Crom Tavesh. Yeah. It's so good just because you get to play all the bullshit, but then you have 2 5-drops that you don't have to take off of Adnaz to have just like sitting there as value engines. Hey, are we talking about value engines today? Hello.
I do think this deck is your bread and butter right now. When we watched you play it just this last week, it felt more akin to what you like to do. I felt your presence as a player like more than I've ever felt it before. You know, like it felt like Malcolm was like a cool little almost like a gimmicky thing that you had found and you had stuck to it and you really wanted to make it your own. But, you know, after a while, you just found out that it isn't as effective or as unique to your personal play style as you might have hoped. And now that you're playing this, it's like I watch you cast. You literally tutored for Jeweled Lotus so that you could get Tavesh out there on turn 1. And it's like Tavesh sits out there and you get the thralls. And then next turn, it's like, yeah, I'll just sack one of these thralls, draw 2 cards. You know, and it's like,
yeah, that's just really fucking good.
It's really good. And it's like, we're going to lose this fucking game because Jordan's just drawing so many cards. And then you cast Crom and Kyle just played right into the Crom. He just let you draw cards. He kept casting. I was like, I'm not feeding it. I can win with 1 spell at a time. I'm still fine. I'm not going to feed the Crom. But it is like very much, I feel like this is becoming more akin to what you want to do and who you are as a player.
I agree. I think I'm finding it. I'm finding like I get to play the cards I want to play, right? Like I have tons of space in this list that I'm messing around with, and you know, playing with the wheel package, which I still like, kind of TBD on that right now.
Yeah.
But I love Displacer Kitten, right? And like this is finally a great deck to play it. I felt like Evelyn most of the time you weren't casting it until you were playing World Gorger. You were just going for the win. And so it still felt like a very tunnely, heads down kind of deck, where this kind of feels more open, available to the situation. And so like the Displacer Kitten line, like if I just seed my hand, I have like a way to get to Dockside and Displacer Kitten. The line is so easy. It's just like freaking you use the Dockside to pay for Displacer Kitten. As long as you have another mana, you usually have a non-creature spell for 1 mana in your hand. Most of the time.
Your curve is so low.
The curve is super fucking low. And so you hit that, you get the ritual off again, you get your Tavesh, you do it again. Hell, even sack the Dockside, I don't know, to draw 2 cards, flicker your Tavesh, now you're drawing 4 cards.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a manual storm deck at that point.
Yeah,
like,
it's you can even go get a reanimate or whatever. Sack the Dockside, reanimate it, get that trigger, flicker the Tavesh, get your Dockside back to the battlefield, get that trigger, and then with the 2 cards you've already picked up, again, 2 more cards you picked up, hopefully be able to chain into more Dockside flickers and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. And that's all like if I'm not just outright winning with Grixis shit.
It was kind of like amazing to see. I felt like, there's a crescendo to the game, right? When someone goes off and they start chaining together, like how they're going to win the game through their value engines. Like when I watched the Thrasios Dargo deck basically do that with Displacer Kitten and Dockside.
Right.
I felt like a symphony was playing, and it was just like this building orchestra of how are they, what? Like it was disbelief. And so now that you've got that package in there, it's like, holy shit, yeah, it's going to, when it happens and it pops off, which it's not unlikely that it does. It's like, this whole win second format is just like you sit back, you play your interaction, you play off the right foot, and then you play a Dockside. And most people, I mean, it's hard to interact with Dockside on the stack unless you're literally pitching a Force of Will. Right. So, I think it's going to be a great deck. And I feel like you're definitely going to see success, probably notch a few dubs and get into that top 10 at Gabby's.
Wow, I really appreciate the hype there on that. We will fucking see. I still need a lot of practice, so
same.
We'll see. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think it lets me play a lot of the fun stuff, and there's a lot of neat interactions that is what I really like out of a deck. And so when you lose those, I start losing a little interest.
Yeah.
So I think this has enough in it for me. But why it's really good is the freaking value engines, and that's what we're going to talk about right now with our main topic.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So value engines are why mid-range decks are good. But why are value engines good?
I'm wondering how you want to get into this, because there's a lot of places to start.
There's a lot of places to start. I would like to start with a very simple question.
Yes.
Why are value engines good?
It's
a pretty open.
Yeah. Well, it's the hope is that you're accruing value over like time. Like I think more rather so your investment. Like I'd say like if you can pay 3 mana for a card. Like, is that like the standard? Would you say, like, if you paid 2 mana, you would draw a card, right? And so if
draw?
you're so if you have an ability that you can play down one time, sticks to the board, and you're able to like curb that cost and basically draw more cards where your average cost is less than 2 mana per card, I feel like that's when you start straying into the like value engine territory.
Totally, yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there with the whole concept of like you invest in it once and it just lets you maintain this level of resources.
Yeah.
And you don't have to continue investing. And sometimes you do, Mr. Gamora, whatever. But more often than not, you get to put it out there and it gets to keep you in the game apropos of anything else going on.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it, is resources. And that's whenever I teach someone how to play Magic, that's the way I always phrase it is, mana is a resource. Cards are resources. Like, I treat mana like a currency. So, like, value engines can be in the form of many different things because, like, there are so many different aspects to the game that allow you to push yourself forward, whether it's generating more mana or generating more card velocity so you can see more cards, draw more cards, scry more cards. Those are value engines, like Trelasara. So, like, just shout out to Nate. We played PDH, which is Pauper EDH, and he had Trelasara as his commander. Trelasara says whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Trelasara and scry 1. And so it's like with commons, it's pretty crazy how much you can gain life. And so it's like you just play a card. Soul Warden is a common. Essence Warden is a common. So just whenever a creature enters, those 2 triggers happen. Put a counter on it, scry 1. Put a counter on it, scry 1. And so it's like to the bottom, to the bottom.
That is a value engine. Perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's open-ended, right? Because it is always about a resource, but it's not about the same resource.
Yep.
And I think a deck thrives when it is able to utilize its resource most efficiently and maintain its resources, regardless of what that resource is.
Yeah.
The interesting part of Magic is that we get to choose what decks we use and what resources we prioritize.
Yes. And it's like there are times when I'm deck building and it's hard to explain my process because value engines are different to everybody because it just depends on your play style. When Ritter calls me out for building Rube Goldberg machines, it's because I don't see one card as a value engine. I see the whole deck as a value engine. Yeah. Like I am building one singularity of value engine where the cards come together to create one monster of a machine that gets me where I'm going.
Yeah.
Which is why he says I assemble some like convoluted, like crazy assembly machine. It's like my Enchantress value engine, right? It alone, they slow down the game, but like as soon as you drop a Serra Sanctum, it's like now I'm generating way more mana than everybody else. It's dropping into the Sanctum Weaver, and then my value engine starts generating from the number of enchantments that I have.
Totally, yeah, I totally agree. Like what you were saying before with the giver, or not the giver, but the sisters, the soul wardens. Like I wouldn't say one of them on the battlefield is a value engine, but when you have 2 of them on the battlefield plus the commander that's playing off that is all of a sudden you're starting to assemble a value engine. Sometimes value engines are a single card. We're talking about Rhystic Studies, Sylvan Library, lots of those kind of things. But yeah, exactly with your enchantment package. Like the second your Serra Sanctum's tapping for 3, and every card you cast draws you a card and a half, that is a very successful value engine at that point.
And I'll try to just like keep my stop bouncing around so much, but like even a value engine can be like Wandering Archaic can be considered a value engine, right?
Totally.
Because like the best value engines in the game are the ones that generate value without you having to do anything, which is why Rhystic Study is good. Mm-hmm. Other people play the game and you benefit from it. So like Wandering Archaic is just like whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery, unless they pay 2, you copy it. So it's like, holy shit, I can get some like crazy value off that. If you guys had ever followed me when I did Call Me Commander, I did a top 5 cards for Strixhaven, and I talked about just some of the simple things that you can abuse, but it gets really crazy when you have a Wandering Archaic out there and you get to Adnaz before the Adnaz player because they don't have the 2 mana to pay for that trigger. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of crazy. I love it. I really love Wandering Archaic as a value engine, but yes, like you can extend it that far and say that these stacks pieces generate value.
Yeah. Focusing us a little bit, because this is such a broad topic. I want us to direct to the top of the meta, right? Ad nauseum. This is the big bad. This is what wins games, right? This is what everybody loves to be on the dick of.
If you're playing black, yes.
I mean, yeah, most people play black so that they can play this card. I would say. So shout out to I don't know any of the names, but we'll link them all down below. I should have been more prepared. That's on me. The guy who just won the last Mox Masters. We're just gonna chat about this casually.
Yes.
He is the Jeska Timna deck, Mardu, and he has elected to cut Ad Nauseam from his deck, typically in Turbo Ad Nauseam deck.
Fuck Ad Nause.
Yeah, this is like a whole fuck Ad Nause kind of podcast today. And I'll be honest, man, I'm kind of pondering, like, does this Tevesh Grom deck actually need Adnaz? But let's get into his deck and what he did and why I think it was so good. He started valuing top end, and I think that is very underrated in CDH. And I think it's getting better. They're putting better cards. Hullbreaker Horror is not that old. And we just got Hoarding Broodlord. I would love to shout out the fact that no fucking content creator knows how to pronounce this card properly.
Hordling?
Hordling. Every person says Hordling. There's no L on this.
That's because it's called the Hordling Broodlord, dude.
The Hordling's not even a word.
It's like turtling.
Hoarding is a word. Oh my God.
Hordle.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'll step down off my soapbox.
Just quick shout out, because we do love you guys, but Dylan and Cam were saying Hordling, like in the most recent episode.
The CDHTV and just, oh man, it's everywhere. Anyway, I think the longer it'll be out, the more people will correct them. Anyway, so now we have these Hoarding Broodlord lines, right? Like, I think we've already discussed it. It's the whole Saw and half combo. Look it up. Everybody's talking about it. That's a pretty chunky creature to put in the Adnaz deck.
Yeah, let's be clear that Hoarding Broodlord is not itself a value engine. It is the end result of a value engine, right? Because once it happens, it's done, right? You're chaining to finish the game. Like, your value engine helps you reach the Hoarding Broodlord. Your value engine helps you reach the Adnaz. Your value engine helps you reach your combo line.
Yeah, I would say a Broodlord is like a soft win condition, like Underworld Breach is a soft win condition. Sure. I would not call. Yes, they're both value pieces. They give you resources and such, but the way they're played more often than that is not that.
Right. We have to look at the second word that we're talking about. Value is great, but the engine is what we're talking about.
Yeah, if we're just talking about value, all these fucking cards play value. You play mana, you get value. That's how the game of Magic works. But we're talking about engines here that turn and generate us resources.
Yeah, you big dummy.
You big freaking idiot. Anyway, so yeah, this guy is elected to play a higher curve, right? And cut Adnaz. I mean, he's playing Villas and a Reanimator package, and so that he can also hit his Hoarding Broodlord. I think he's also have to play PETA. He's playing Necropotence, which I think plays a great line between a win condition and a value engine. A lot of times you can just pay 4 life and go back up to 7 if you need to.
Oh, 100%. That's where I see the value.
And I agree. At this point, it's definitely getting phased out a little bit of CDH, but I definitely think that is where it shines. And because of that, I would reckon that we'll probably start seeing it more again. The fact that we're calling that for the meta to shift into a more mid-range strategy again. I can only imagine that black decks will be running Necropotence.
Yes. It's one Dark Ritual away from.
It's always been my thought, man. Yes. It's like you're always running Dark Rit, you're always running Cabal Ritual.
Yes.
Like that is, and that's where I'm getting to is like why I'm considering kind of going around this Jessica Timna route is I have all these great rituals, but more often than not, it's just tutors to find ad nauseum, and you don't have a lot of great payoffs. And so I feel like a lot of the time you have kind of worst card quality, and you don't have your rituals don't get you there every time, right? Like you have to be very conservative and very conscientious and efficient with your resources, because a lot of times they're weaker resources. Like your ritualing, those aren't great. Like compare that to a Signet, that is not good.
Right.
So because of that, I feel like often these decks get into a very like toxic strategy of just committing and buckling under, any amount of opposition, because it's just there's so many interactable points. You can interact on the ritual, you can interact on the counter or on the tutor, and then you can finally interact on the win condition or whatever. But should you opt out of that, and should you take the ad nause out, put a higher top end in, right? Now all of a sudden you still play these rituals. You're not in green most of the time. I'm talking specifically for me and Grixis. But now all of a sudden you play these rituals, and these rituals get you to game warping effects.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're casting a Hullbreaker or can't be countered, game warping. You're winning that.
These are the things we're seeing in Standard, and how Standard is being broken in the moment is reanimation.
Exactly. Atrax is a great example, and that's multi-format. That's in CEDH now. That's in every fucking format.
Right.
And it's because, exactly what you said, Reanimate is really good, and we're getting better targets fucking every day for Reanimate. And that just is diametrically opposed to what ad nauseum decks want to do, right? And thankfully, we have the alternative. We have Peer into the Abyss. Everybody stopped playing Peer into the Abyss, and I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is to stop playing ad nauseum and play Peer into the Abyss as your alternative, and then you just play a higher card quality deck, even if that means you raise your mana curve a little bit, because you're going to be seeing that later game.
Right. This is where I don't have the experience as a player with I honestly have a hard time wrapping my head around black mana and the strategies involved with it. So cutting ad nause, what card quality are you talking about improving upon? I guess, because let's say I'm a new player. Hi.
I mean, that's fair. I can't tell you exactly what out of the Grixis shell I'd be cutting for what package and how many cards, but I'll tell you, cards like fucking Rite of Flame don't feel great.
No, yeah, we talked about that, right? It's like you asked me, is it worth a slot? You see it in pretty much every shell. It came into play once when you played it, and you're like, this is the only time I imagine it's ever going to do what I need it to do. And that's the thing, is that there are these little cards with very little payoff that just do enough because as we learned just by playing with some new folks, they had a different mindset about how to put your opponents off just their mana count by 1, because they're so used to playing against ad nause. It's what if you
exactly if you know where to stick your finger in? Yeah,
exactly. So what if you created essentially a dynamic where it didn't matter you're just generating so many resources, or at least a number of resources, to where it didn't feel like a glass cannon. And that's where decks that revolve around value engines like Thrasios, where it's that is the value engine. You can just keep activating it and keep putting lands out and keep drawing cards. Or now a rising star in CDH, Teom, Luminous Enigma.
Huge engine.
Literally an engine.
Yep.
It requires a little bit of gasoline, but once you get those 3 counters going and the mana going, it's I'll just rifle through my whole library. It's it's pretty sweet.
There are a lot of commanders, good commanders, that are engines in the command zone.
Yes, and that's
why they're good.
Xeris for me. That's an engine that I love to build around. Right. So Corvold, yes,
Corvold is king engine.
Yes, that is literally a V8 fucking Hellcat right there. So is a V12 Hellcat?
I don't fucking know.
I don't know enough about cars. You can correct us in the comments.
Glad you brought it up so we could all be wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, to just sort of capitalize on what you're aiming for when you're establishing a value engine is putting permanents on the board. I'd say the best value engine in the game is Dockside, right? So Dockside doesn't yield cards. Sometimes it does, but more than anything, it yields the mana necessary to push. So you can keep playing cards.
See, here's an interesting thing. I would disagree with that. I would call Dockside a ritual. I think Dockside is a one-time investment for...
And the things that support the Dockside loop strategies, like Emil.
I would say Emil is a huge
value engine.
Even if it didn't combo.
Yeah.
Yes, a huge engine.
Yes.
And then on top of that, Kitten. Perfect engine.
Yes.
Those are the cards that take advantage of the other card.
All right. I see your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so things I guess so here is what I do with my Enchantress packages when I'm building towards a value engine is I really liked Meticulous Excavation from Brothers War because I knew that it would be an excellent engine with Dockside. It could help me loop Dockside, but it could also help me loop Zakama when I wanted to go for that combo, right? So it just gets me value either through Zakama would just bring me value through permanent removal, gaining life or whatever, but Meticulous Excavation was in a way for me to recycle ETB effects.
Right.
So that was, it is a high cost, but you can do it at instant speed during your turn. So that's where I saw its value. And unfortunately, no one else has seen it yet.
It is an engine. It's just it's a tough sell right now. But I do think, there is a world for it for sure.
Yeah, the ceiling is infinite mana with Dockside.
Yeah, I mean, the ceiling is very high. So, I mean, it's worth consideration. So say you're sold on this concept, right? Say you love this top end idea. If most of these games aren't over by turn 2, they're getting to turn 5. And if you resolve any one of these pieces, you will immediately take that game over.
Yes.
The ad nauseum would actually be gassed out, or they'll be trying to tutor to gear up for another go. But they're not going to have anything solid in place that's really threatening the board state or already threatening the game until they're ready to just kind of pop off again, which is obvious, and you'll be ready for it again. Because this is what this deck does, is installs value engines.
Yes.
These decks install value engines so that they can interact early. They can burn their hand out. They're not burning their hand out on cheap shit to get to a turn 2 win. They're fighting that guy. That's what they do. They either put the stacks pieces out that stop it early, get the Dranith out, whatever. Your Arcane Laboratory, that's something I want to fucking tech in. We'll see what's up. Your Dampening Spheres, whatever the fuck. Something I love in this build I'm playing is that I get to play Curse Totem. No creature activations.
Yeah.
Fucking Gucci. So you're spending those early turns. Yes, you're getting your mana in. Yes, you're getting your value engines in still. We love those turn 1 Mystics and everything. But you're also making sure that person's not winning. 100%, that's what you need to do. Like, you need to recognize, it's all exactly what Chris was telling us, right? Like, who's the beatdown, that article? It's like, you got to realize this motherfucker's definitely going to try and win before me, so it's my job to stop him without killing yourself to the other 2 players at the table.
Right.
And I think that's really the crucial spot, and I think that's where value engines come into play. If you manage to ramp, install a value engine, and hold up interaction for that guy, while everybody else is just feeding, you will get to reinstall yourself into that turn 3, turn 5 vibe.
Which is why Ragavan gets killed so early. Like, it's one thing to take the 2 damage.
Massive value engine.
Yeah, it's
the value engine.
It is the best
it's ridiculous.
one mana engine.
Yeah.
So, because it does generate you mana, it does generate you card advantage, and it does take your opponent's life down. So, like, I would say Dragon Rage Channeler, another really great value engine.
It's a great one-drop engine.
Yeah, you can establish it very early. Esper Sentinel, great value engine.
I actually don't run Darcy all the time, but I totally would consider it in this Reanimator deck, right? If we're putting Villas in, if we're putting Hoarding Broodlord in.
Oh, yeah. Hordling
Broodlord in. Bro, just imagine fucking top of deck tutor, like Vamp tutor the Broodlord at the top, and then 1 non-creature spell that's in the graveyard ready to go.
Yeah, your hand could literally just be a rock, a land, Darcy, and then you vamp.
Vamp tutor Reanimate is your opening hand. And you're like, all right, I win the game.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty fucking cash.
Yeah, that would be pretty fucking amazing, honestly.
Yeah.
So
and that's what I really envied as I was selling my soul for the turbo lifestyle, is I envied the pivotability, the ability to call an audible because you had the resources to do that. Like, a lot of times it felt like you're all in, and if your timing was wrong, you're fucked. And like that, I mean, and then shout out to the people that can win, because really it is knowing timing. It is knowing what everybody else at the table,
I
their
get
timing.
so nervous and sweaty when I get close.
Oh God. Yeah. So, and I felt like, I felt like if I just lost the timing, I lost the game. So I wanted something where I can, instead pivot, and I can actually focus on the table and stop the other people from winning until I felt comfortable for it.
Yeah.
And that's where I really think these value engines come into play.
Yeah, totally. It's now, to say like value engines are amazing, it is it is timing, right? You have to find the right moment to establish them. Establishing them later in the game isn't always in your best interest, because what value you're going to get when someone is threatening to win.
Right.
So there are plenty. Like, the thing is that when we talk about the top 300, which is something we haven't quite laid the foundation for, we're talking about the top 300 cards that are playable in a competitive. Well, in competitive EDH, really, right? The pool of cards that you can play one-ofs and whatever, and like, there are enough great cards in the top 300 to where you don't necessarily need to put any value engines in your deck. You can just straight gas it out, and that's what your Grixis Malcolm deck was just straight gas. Clear. Did you cut Rhystic Study at one point?
No, but other decks have.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
You know, it's just like because they're like hell bent on.
That was a crazy couple of weeks where everybody was talking about cutting Ristic Study.
Yeah, you idiots.
Like,
You know, it's
there's no turn 2. Ristic Study's bad. And like, shut the fuck up.
yeah, it's like, no, you're going to get there. It's funny how the format has completely changed where
We're
like
having a polar opposite conversation right now.
all the people who are listening now, like, and I'm going to tailor this into like any level of competition that you may have in your pod in Commander, but like at the highest level, you can now relish in the fact that these like competitive games don't go 2 turns only. They aren't super fast. They aren't savage and like mean. There are a lot of interactive points in the game, but these games go to turn 5 or 6 pretty much every single game now. It's because everyone is like,
it's the interaction.
yeah, everyone is like packing the interaction that's necessary for them to compete. So, and give themselves the best chance to win. So a lot of these games go longer than your, like turn 1, Rograk. I watched a Rograk Tevesh guy win on turn 1 once.
Yeah, I mean, you totally
like,
can.
Yeah, it's
I think
crazy. But
I think everybody's like, it's a turn 2 format, which is like, yeah, most decks are set up to either win by turn 2 or to stop the win by turn 2. And I think that's super, super crucial to recognize. But most decks are set up to stop the win by turn 2. So when that happens, it's not fucking turn 2 anymore. We're getting to those turn 5s.
Yeah, and so value engines, like when you talk about like this format, right? And you're like, when I get to turn 5, what kind of value engine can I put into place that's going to generate me enough value over the course of 2 turns that is going to help me win the game or put me in the right spot to win? So when you start working your way down the competitive ladder and you don't want to be so competitive and you want to play in the high power spell table games, like value engines are more welcome. While someone may sneak in a competitive deck every once in a while, like you're able to set up engines on turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, and they generate enough value for you to like enjoy them through the game.
Totally.
In mid power, value engines are king, right? So it's what everyone's trying to do because that's the quirkiest way to like win the game.
Those are those
like
8-piece value engines.
It's literally my Xerus deck is like, I would call that mid as fuck, even though.
Yeah, I mean, those are most of,
Yeah.
most of the decks we used to play that were kind of like gross they were still mid decks. He's like, you assemble 5 cards and things get kind of haywire.
Yeah, Psychic Corrosion shouldn't be like this deck that your card you play in a high power. It's just not good enough, right? So you every time you draw a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. In a competitive format, putting 2 cards in your opponent's graveyard is a good thing for
them.
So with how popular Reanimation is, where we're talking about, it's like it's not a great card, but in mid it's great. It's a really great engine because your opponents lose like access to those cards. Essentially, they're not playing those like Reanimation effects unless
no one's like, oh, I'll just Vamp Tutor for Breach. Perfect.
Yeah. Unless they're like literally like gearing their deck towards like their commander is like a Reanimator or whatever.
Right.
I digress. But when you get into low power, value engines just like take over the game. It's like, but you can establish many. There are tons of board wipes. You can reset and reestablish value engines. You get that experience over and over again. So they come into play in all different forms, all different shapes. And I guess what we were trying to talk about is like at the highest level, like is ad nause like the end goal for, or are you looking to set up value engines so that you can get bigger payoffs with things like Peer into the Abyss and Hoarding Broodlord and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we're coming from, is like when you play in those lower power levels, your engines are gonna fucking run train on people. If they're disruptive and they're like giving you cards and taking cards away from your opponents, like Share the Spoils was such a fun fucking engine, dude. Like I'm telling you right now, go out and buy Share the Spoils, not because it's a competitive card or it will ever be in a competitive format ever, but it was so much fun.
It was pretty fun.
It should literally be expensive for how fun it is.
It's like a plane chase effect.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like.
So if you're unfamiliar, it's 1 in a red for an enchantment that when it enters the battlefield or when an opponent loses the game, each player exiles the top card of their library, and then you may play a land or cast a spell once during your turn only from the pile, and then if you do, you exile the top card of your library. And so it's kind of like this cool, like everyone gets a card, like you throw it all into a pile and everyone gets a chance to cast a card like that. That's a value engine because you're seeing, like, depending how many players are at the table, sometimes people play 5 or 6 player games. Mm-hmm. You're going to see 5 or 6 more cards, so it's for 2 mana, even at a 4 player table, you're seeing 3 other cards. And potentially taking a piece away. Like I remember we flipped Kyle's Adnaz into the pile and someone else passed it.
It gets a little crazy when you start playing with like high power decks. But no, yeah, for sure. It is a super fun card.
So yeah, you can play in this is why this conversation extends beyond the competitive scene, because
totally
it is live.
Every format in Magic plays value engines.
Yeah.
They all just look different.
And when I talked about Teyam a long time ago, like those were mid decks and those were like value engines that like, yes, it did revolve around Teyam, but like I was playing a landfall variant, I was playing stuff like that where it wasn't like, it was very like low to mid power. So yeah, it scales.
Yeah. It's funny that we were talking about it and we fully actually have circled since that conversation that we were talking about cutting Ristic Study, and now here we are like cut ad nauseum and put more Ristic Studies in your deck. Yeah, that is probably the easiest way to level with people and say it is like, we're telling you, get rid of the ad nause, play Ristic, Mystic, Esper, Sentinel type effects, because they just generate it for a lower cost. Over time, they sometimes generate an equal or greater value. Yeah, like you need that many cards when you cast an Adnaz because you need enough cards to win the game. Because pretty much after that, you're absolutely fucked. If you can't win, things are going to go really bad. Your win percentage, your window closes very quickly. But the opposite happens once you install one of those things, right? Obviously, you're not drawing 30 cards, whatever. But what you're doing is you're drawing 6 cards, maybe over the course of 4 turns, if a thing goes unanswered. And if your card quality is dense enough. Bingo. Yeah. If you have a tutor, you find that reanimate, or you find the fucking way to discard the Hordling Broodlord. I said that one as a joke. Any one of those is better than drawing fucking 30 cards and putting the bullseye like right on yourself. Yeah, that's what Necropotence does, and that's why I'm not like super sold on it as like it can come back. We've seen cards like Chain Veil out of nowhere just like come back and win tournaments. So it's not that I'm saying Necropotence is dead or useless. It's just, man, does it paint a big old target on your back, because now people know you're using your life as a resource, where in other cases people know you're playing black, you're probably playing Adnaz, you're probably playing Peered in the Abyss, so you're gonna use your life as a resource. Mm-hmm. So that's Necropotence is just something that sits on the field and says, danger, 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 danger. They're getting so many cards. They're getting so many cards. See, I feel like it's more undervalued. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, you say you Mystic Tutor a fucking Adnaz on top of your deck. That's red Sirens and stuff. But if I 100%. Even if I turn 1 Dark Written Necropotence, pay 3 life, I think it's a more political card. You can't politic Adnaz. Adnaz is, I win right now, fuck everybody. But Necropotence isn't like that. Unless you're running Final Fortune and you're fucking hitting it on that top 30 that you pay the life for. Yeah. And you have the fucking Rite of Flame or whatever. Rite of Flame's a sorcery, but you know what I'm saying. So take it. Yeah. To basically like put them into your hand on your opponent's upkeep or whatever, because that's the next time you would get a chance for priority. Well, I mean, no, you get an opportunity to Final Fortune before you discard the card. So you get an extra turn and everything. Besides the point, I don't think that situation happens that much, and I think that's what everybody's scared of when they see Necropotence. Nobody's fucking playing Shimmer Zur anymore, where you're casting, your Shimmer with Speed and Flash. But I think if you politic it right and you just play that out because it is to you in your mind a value engine, and you're like, pay 3 life, draw 3 cards, go back to 7, pass turn. Yeah, it's not like you get the 3 cards right away though. Too, it's like they go into exile until the end step, and then you get them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, pay the 3, go to pass the turn and stuff like that. You've refreshed your hand. You've set a value engine in place. You didn't ramp because you ritualed, but you have established yourself, and you've maybe not raised the alarm. Yeah, I think it's when you start paying 10 or more life with Necropotence when you start to like raise the alarm. Right. Yeah, and I think that's just about how you play everything. And I think that's the great thing about Necropotence, like we said, is like, it kind of walks that line. Sometimes you're just going to slam it and pay 30 life because you got the nuts. Right. But sometimes you're like, fuck, I just want to just draw a couple extra cards every turn. And essentially it becomes a better Sylvan Library because Sylvan Library is trash. It is. Yeah, so when you said Sylvan Library is a value engine, it is. It is. It is. But so share the spoils. Yeah. And I'm starting to look at Sylvan Library like in a less favorable light. It's pretty bad, man.
It's not, the timing, like, you can't abuse it at will, which is like the best value engines in the game are the ones that you can like instigate over and over again through, like whatever strategy you built, right? The unique way to trigger that value engine is how you take advantage of it and how you break parity. So like for me, when I was building Teom, my like Promise of Boonrai was like a great value piece for me because I could, kill a creature and then get 4 spirits, get 4 vigilance counters, and brr goes the engine, right? And that's a unique way to break parity, a unique way to like generate value. So like that's the bad thing about Sylvan Library is that you play it maybe turn 1. You have to play it on turn 1 if it's any good. If
Honestly.
it's going to be any good, it's got to be on turn 1. And so, turn 2, it feels like it's too late. If you played a land and a bird and, maybe turn 2, you come back around and you play a land, you play a Sylvan Library and like, you're like, okay, so I just sit here and wait and hope no one else wins. You better be hoping you're holding an open mana for like a red elemental blast or something.
Right.
So, there are all these like circumstances where cards are way better on your first turn if you can play them on the first turn versus like now Sylvan Library, it's like draw it on turn 8.
Right. God, it feels bad.
Yes, but Necropotence, it's like you have a ton of mana, you draw it on turn 8, the game's still going. It's like now I have the chance to refill my hand and actually pick up interaction so that I can get to my next turn.
Yeah.
So that is significantly better. It's just paying life. It's such an easy cost to pay.
It gives you that flexibility.
In Sylvan Library, if it was just like whenever you would draw a card, you can, this effect would be nutty, but like whenever you draw a card, you may draw 3 instead and choose 1 and put 2 back, right? Like if that were the case, like
it'd be pretty good.
It'd be way, way better, but obviously that's me creating a fantasy scenario. So like that's Sylvan Library is slowly phasing out. I hope I'm wrong, right? And there's still room for it and I'm not stupid for keeping it in my deck, but like it's like the conversation of like, do you take Rhystic Study out? And it's like, no, you dummy. It's like, and everyone's like playing Sylvan Library if you're playing green. That's how weak green is that there's no better replacement for it.
My question is this: if we are right, we're kind of hypothesizing this. If the meta shifts, if we go to more of a mid-range style, if Ad Nauseam starts to falter because of it, does Sylvan Library start getting better because you get more turns for it to generate enough resources?
Yes, but yes, like straight up. If you get it out early, it's able to generate more. If you get it out turn 2, turn 3, if the game goes on until turn 4 or 5, you at least get a few turns where you see more cards. But I do think that like Survival of the Fittest is just way better in the current meta to like find what you need. Obviously, it sucks to Opposition Agent, but fucking Sylvan Library sucks to your Wheel Thief package.
Sylvan Library just sucks.
It's like as soon as you start talking about drawing cards and you're like, Notion Thief, and then you're just like, well, this just sucks.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like getting to play these slightly chunkier cards. Like I want to play more 3-drops than like most of these Grixis decks do, and because they're value engine. Narset, fucking sick value engine. Notion Thief, sick value engine. Oppo Agent, I would call that more of a stacks piece.
Right, it is, yeah.
I don't know if Notion Thief is probably more of a stacks piece, but that's kind of mid for me.
It stacks, but it does generate value.
Yeah, but it requires something else to make it happen, so I would call it more of a stack.
Archivist of Ogma.
Great value. S% obviously.
Yes.
So, we could just sit here all day naming value engines. But that was all of them. Never mind. We got every last one.
Yeah.
That's pretty much most of my bit. I'm going to be testing this as we go into the next few weeks. Am I cutting add-ons like immediately? TBD. We'll chew on it.
Probably not.
This has been a big discussion.
You play the tournament, you see if you can fire one off, and if you do, you probably win the game.
But like, I also just love the idea of coming up from behind, like you just don't see it, and all of a sudden, like, what the fuck? This deck's playing Villas, this Grixis deck, even more than the Mardu deck. Like, that was surprising. But when a fucking Grixis deck shows up and it's got, Hordling Broodlord, LOL, Villas in it, it's fucking Necropotencing, it's Puring, like,
very different decks.
Bolus's Citadel, like, that they were running a Bolus's Citadel with the Goblin Welder lines, and I could totally do something like that. It was great because he was able to manipulate Goblin Welder for defense grid too. So it was pretty much an awesome little like out of nowhere like silence effect.
Yeah, I love that. And like I think mid-ranging ad nause is possible, right? Like when someone goes off for their win or they present a way to win, using ad nause as a way to fetch interaction is less popular than it is to like, hey, I have the mana for ad nause, I'm going to fire it off and see if anyone can interact with it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's more of like players, and the anticipation for ad nause, I think, is like you can see it on the battlefield. Like what you have present on the board can often signal that you have, or that you're ready to fire off your ad nause, or you just tutored and you put something on top and you have 5 mana available. It's like, what if you just, you tutored and you picked up the card because you don't need to fire off ad nause right then and there, right? It's like, I'll just pass the turn. You picked it up, wait until the proper moment, the last possible moment, fire it off, pick up a ton of cards, including a ton of interaction, stop them on the stack, like picking up a Mind Break Trap. Obviously, it's going to hurt a lot, but, you did pick it up, and so you can, like, at least fire off your interaction almost like, aha, in a way.
Yeah.
But, obviously you don't get to, like, cast all your rocks and stuff like that, which is where, but you do almost guarantee that you get back to your next turn with a full fucking grip.
Right, for sure. And I think that goes back to what I was saying about those decks thriving with timing.
Yes.
Like, because I wouldn't call that more mid-range. I think that's just picking your opportune moment, even if that's later in the game. I think as a whole, like, I think those decks suffer the longer the game goes, though, because the more incidental life losses happen. The more fetch lands you've cracked, the more 1/1s, 2/2s that have come over.
That punched you because you're playing black,
right? Even your value necropotencing, whatever. So I just don't think as a strategy it holds up in these games that are going to these time.
If your mana value, if your curve is so low in like Crom Tevesh, right, to where you can hold on to it and you can wait to like for an opportune moment, the timing becomes, but you have Crom out so you don't get punched.
Oh yeah.
Like that's kind of where I'm like, wow, this is a really sexy line.
Totally agree. And that was actually a huge argument to switch in the first place, because not only that, but Tevesh being a planeswalker is fucking awesome because people love attacking planeswalkers when they're on the battlefield.
It's a life cushion.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's a life cushion that's pretty fucking easy to protect. He makes 2 0/1s and then you cast Crom next turn. And he's pretty easy to hold up. So yeah, I mean, as far as Grixis decks go, padding your life total, or protecting it rather, that's a pretty good one for it.
Yeah, this leans into my last value engine, but like cards like Toski and Orin Frostfang are popularized in green decks, including like Naya decks like Jetmir and the like. Even Ian was building it into Shalai and Halar.
Totally.
Because, Flying Vigilance, whatever, and you can peck someone over the top.
In my head, any of those are infinitely better than Sylvan Library.
Yeah, the creatures that you're attacking with aren't powerful though, right? They aren't the ones that are like, a 8/8 double striker that's going to come over the top. That's, more battle cruiser or low power.
Yeah.
It's like
they're part of your value engine. They're the 1/1 flyers and shit like that.
Someone doesn't have a creature down.
The ginger brutes.
Yeah. Because you're turboing out, you have a ton of mana. Like let's say you land Esper Sentinel and then next turn you land Mana Vault, tap your land and Mana Vault for a Toski, and you're going to hit somebody with your Esper Sentinel so you can draw a card, right? That's what we're talking about. Like, so if you played Tevesh out on turn 1, like there's a likelihood that there's no value in me punching Tevesh for 1.
Right.
Where everything he does pluses you. It doesn't.
Literally, that's the other huge upside. He's like, do you want a +1 and +2 to this turn?
Yeah. Talk about value. And so like, those are like things that I'm considering teching into like my Shalai and Alara build, is because I have all these little weenies, right? And it'd be great if someone had their guard down and I could just peck them and get cards.
And they almost always do, as long as you have the creature density to justify it, which honestly doesn't even need to be that high.
Right.
Like I don't think you need to be a 30 creature deck for justifying those kind of cards.
Yeah. Like the decks that play Jetmir, it's like Jetmir can come down and it's not immediately a threat to the game. It is a threat to life totals, but is not an immediate threat to the game. So it can exist on the battlefield for multiple turns without being removed and generate that value so you can get the card draw.
Right. And that's a really good way of looking at like Jetmir versus other commanders, other value pieces. Is like how much attention does it draw, right? Like sometimes just casting Crom, people want to kill Crom immediately because it's like they're looking at a heuristic study that flies.
Just as swords.
Yeah.
Like they'll hit it with swords almost immediately, or a Path to Exile because you're not playing basics.
But like you look at Jetmir and it's essentially a value engine, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's more of like it is harnessing the resources you've already gained, and it's an out, or it's your win, it's your overrun effect, whatever the fuck you want to call it. But like you said, it'll sit there. It'll just sit there, even though we know they're amassing creatures. We know next turn they're going to cast at least one, probably more than one.
Yeah.
Right? And like that's not great, but it has sat there because it just doesn't draw. It's not the value engine, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like it does not do, or on paper look as scary as what Crom does, even though I think the reality is completely the opposite. Like me drawing 2 cards versus you getting, I don't know, fucking 30 power next turn. Like that's game warping.
Yeah. Because it's looking at one side and being like, I get a few cards and it might be what I need to like go off. And then you're looking at, well, I'll lose 30 life on the other end. So
yeah. And that's the other thing is like, I felt like it was always super scary because you're always like, I have shit mana and most of it's rituals. So it's like, sometimes I'm just going to burn some rituals to set up that value engine. Everybody's like, that was way too fast. That was way too scary. And now you got something scary on board and I don't like it.
What we're learning is glass cannons don't work as effectively as they used to.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can kind of take that target off yourself and, you know, kind of, like I've said a few times, just get to that middle of the game, I think this is where we're going to find some sweet spots. I think this is where we're going to find some success.
That's why I'm so worried about Shalai and Halar, dude, because people are like, it's got a 2-card combo. If they play it, they've got the combo. You know, it's like,
yeah,
that's the fucking war zone I'm walking into.
I hope you get the opposite. I hope you get the opposite where they're just like, I don't know. It's just like another commander. It's not as good as Rocco. It's brand new. Half the people haven't even seen it yet.
Right.
Like, we'll see. I think you get that. I think you'll get the luxury of that. This is like the first tournament since that's come out, really.
Yeah, I just can't wait to evolution a bird into Heliod and then fucking go for it.
Yeah, I can't wait to fucking see that. It's gonna be hot as hell.
Be sweet. Anyway, y'all talked out.
I'm good to go. Put more value engines in your deck.
Yeah,
fuck add-ons.
They will pay off. Like, I know that everyone has that player in their pod who's greedy and will expend all of their resources and burn all the cards in their hand. And then when they don't get there or you interact with them, they're dead for the rest of the game.
100% me.
This prevents that.
This prevents that. Is that you? Then do this.
Yeah.
Let me know how it goes because I'm going to test it out right now.
Do you want to win more games? Do you want to be a better player? Look
at
some value engines. All right. That's enough from us here at the MoxStars podcast. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and make sure to rate us on any and all podcast platforms. Go search them out, figure out how to do it. It goes a long way for the algae rhythm. And we're gonna probably get into some Magic right here and now. We have to start training for this tournament, so
yes,
we gotta go.
Deuces.
Bye-bye.